this and figure out stuff real quick. So we're gonna. There we go. Oh, I'm zoomed way in on myself though. What is going on? Oh, I know what it is. It's because it's Skype, and the way that they format the window is different. So that works. We can see faces. I think we're good.
Yeah, cool.
All right, and audio's coming through. I'll stop the music that you can't hear anyway. That was just for the people in the chat room. And yeah, I think we're ready to go. Let me make sure you're hearing the right thing. Can you hear this?
Sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit.
Okay.
I can.
So I'll play my intro. Do the intro. We'll do the show for however long we feel like talking. Just whatever points you want to get across. Make sure you tell me to shut the hell up and get your point in. Because I can.
Okay.
You know how it is. I can go forever. I can fill time. So.
Yes, that's what we're here to do. Yeah, we only do this because we like to hear ourselves talk.
So all right. Well, if you're ready, I'm ready.
Cool.
Now I'm ready. So we will get started then in 3, 2, 1.
But the really important ones are over here. I don't want to get too technical, but these are called core memories. Each one came from a super important time in Riley's life. Like when she first scored a goal. That was so amazing.
Okay, let's go.
Hello and welcome. Welcome and hello. This is Wait You Haven't Seen? It's a show where we talk about movies, and specifically, we talk about a movie at least one of us has never seen before. I'm your host, Travis, a.k.a. TV's Travis. This is episode number 172, and our movie this week is 2015's Inside Out. Joining me to talk about it, because she had not seen it before, Lauren from the Beard Out podcast. Lauren, how are you tonight?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing all right. So you had never seen Inside Out, but are you a Pixar fan in general?
Yes, I am, which is why I was like, why haven't I seen this? This is 100% up my alley. I just hadn't seen it.
I have this weird thing with Pixar. I love Pixar movies. I see almost all of them, but I rarely, since like WALL-E, have I gone to the theater to see them. I seem to like wait a couple of years and I'm like, oh, that's right, I should watch that one, and then I end up doing it. And them all being on Disney Plus now probably doesn't help that much.
Yeah.
So, well, let's just start off with, you hadn't seen it before, but how familiar were you with kind of the idea of it or the concept behind it?
Oh, see, that's the thing. I was really familiar with the idea and the concept behind it, which is why it seemed really wrong that I hadn't seen it. So I was like, I really do need to watch this, which is why I'm glad I have the opportunity to talk about it, because this is one of those movies that, again, I probably won't be able to shut up about now that I actually have seen it, because it was like, no, this is important in its way.
Yeah, and Pixar and Disney are so good at that, right? They Pixar especially, for some reason, they find this thing about a subject, and then they can break it down in a way, and you don't even realize until you're partway through it exactly what you're seeing, and then it hits you. And so I'm going to assume then that you liked the movie.
I did. I really did. I mean, it was one of those, I was watching it, I was like, oh my God, yes. Why hadn't I seen this? And I'm sure we'll get into this as we're talking about it, but like this, it's got layers, and that's what kind of got me. I remember saying out loud, oh my God, there's layers to this. It's amazing.
Yeah. So I always like to start with kind of cast, because that's the first thing you really notice in a movie. And once again, Pixar does what they do great, which is cast voice actors or somebody who maybe hasn't done a lot of voice acting, but they get a great performance out of them. I've yet to see or hear, I guess, a poor voice acting performance in a Pixar movie that I can think of. And this one had one of my favorite castings of all time, which I'm going to get to in a minute. But starting with Amy Poehler as Joy, she's a joy. She's so much. The character's so effervescent, and I love the design, which we're going to get into. But I thought Amy Poehler really captured kind of that, like, that feeling of joy, almost to the point of being, well, past the point of being too much joy.
Yeah, and I feel like Amy Poehler was definitely the perfect casting for that because Joy. This is kind of like a retroactive connection that I'm making here, but like Leslie Knope is pure joy because she's like, no, we can do this though, but like no, but we can, like yay, and I was like, no, that just makes complete sense. Yeah,
and for her to be this character who's just this almost to a point of like toxic joy, I mean, it kind of where it goes, and that's sort of the message behind the movie. We'll dive into, a lot more, but like, what a perfect casting for her. And then around her, the other emotions that they ended up going with, because I did read where they had initially a bunch more emotions that were going to be a part of it, and they sort of whittled it down. And 5 is kind of the right number, I feel like, because even with 5, a couple of them are just sort of there, and they're not like, it's mainly joy and sadness that we're dealing with.
Right. Yeah. With a sprinkling of anger.
Yeah. And sadness was Phyllis Smith, who, if you've ever watched The Office, is Phyllis in The Office. And another one, she just like perfectly fit the character that they were playing with sadness.
Yeah. As I've obviously watched The Office, right? And like that character Phyllis, like she doesn't read as a sad character, but you get her kind of being a sad sack, like in the way, like do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like her, just the intonation in her voice, I'm like, yeah, I guess she's like, but well, okay, all right. And I'm like, no, that's completely perfect.
Yeah.
Like that was, I didn't look into too much of this ahead of time before I watched it. And I'm sitting there and I was like, is that Phyllis? That's Phyllis. That's Phyllis. And sure enough.
So Mindy Kaling is disgust, and she is, of the 5 emotions, she's the one that kind of has the least to do, I would say. But it was spot on casting, because I think just the way she portrayed it, like I love Mindy Kaling anyway, and so she was great to have there. Sort of, that, and green is also the perfect color for disgust. I like that too.
Yeah, absolutely perfect. And I'm sure we'll get into this as we talk about it a little bit more. But disgust may not have had too much to do, but disgust absolutely has to be there, simply due to the fact that I liked that it showed her going from like baby to toddler to kid to teenager.
Yep.
And disgust means different things at those different stages, and I thought they showed that really well.
Yeah.
And Mindy Kaling did a great job doing like, oh no, broccoli, to like, ew. And it was great.
Yeah, and apparently early on the character of disgust was going to be a male type character, and they changed that after Mindy Kaling got cast. So perfect, and honestly I think it works better that way too, because it gives that balance because anger and fear are very strong emotions and very kind of upfront and visceral emotions. So to have kind of joy, sadness, and disgust be female portrayed in this, I feel like balanced that out really well. So I like that. Plus, as you said, the way that they portrayed disgust morphing as she got older fit a lot better. So,
yeah, for sure. Maybe I'm jumping the gun on this,
go for it.
But I liked when they went into the parents' brains and like, okay, because you're talking about the genders of Riley's emotions and how she's got like these 3, that are female, and then these 2 that are male. When they get into the mom's head, they're all female, and then the guy's head, the dad's head, they're all male. So like, what? That's interesting that Riley's emotions have this gender disparity to them.
It is, and I think. So, according to something that I read, Pete Docter basically said, who's the director or the co-director, was like, it's probably not as accurate as we should have been with it to have the dads all be male and the moms all be female, but it was the shorthand, and it was the easier way to kind of make sure you know where you are. But I also kind of thought, as I was thinking about it, it sort of made sense that, like, as these people got older and they identified more and more with those sides of themselves, that their emotional things sort of morphed that way. Like, because I think it was joy and sadness in the dad's brain were basically the same model, just with the big mustache. And so it sort of is one of those things where it just kind of morphed to fit the person. And with Riley being young and still like figuring everything out, it makes sense to have that balance going on. So that's how I read it anyway.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, that makes sense. I just thought it was interesting, and we, as we get into it, we can. I've got a lot to say about the parents' brains.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Bill Hader was fear, and I mean, okay, number one, Bill Hader, great all the time, but perfect for fear. He just had like the right energy for it, and I loved him getting when he had to take the shift for dreams. And even though it's fear, he's seen those dreams so many times that even that didn't affect him, like the teeth falling out or standing there without pants on. He's like, yeah, okay, we've seen this all before. And then when it gets weird, it starts to freak him out again. But I loved Bill Hader in this.
Yeah, I mean, he can do no wrong in my book anyway. I'm yet to see him do any wrong. Yeah, so like I said, I hadn't looked into who was in this before I watched it. And it took me a hot minute to figure out that it was Bill Hader, because when I watch, an animated movie, I tend to let myself get sucked in and like not try to figure out who it is, because I far too often you get stuck in, oh my God, who's that voice? Who's that voice? Who's that voice? And then you kind of miss, like,
you miss things.
You miss things. And so I like to watch animated movies like I'm a kid watching them. I tend to try to watch like any movie like I'm a kid watching it. I'm just like, okay, what's happening?
Yep.
Like not trying to do too much with it, which is why I was again shocked to myself that I hadn't seen this yet, because this is something that I would just kind of sit and watch. But yeah, so I was about halfway through the movie before I realized it was Bill Hader. And I was like, oh no, that makes perfect sense now. See, this, because his voice, he can change it to do so many different things that I don't have like a singular Bill Hader, Dr. Evil Code's voice in my head. So it took me a minute.
Yeah, and what I liked about him is him and Amy Poehler have a very good chemistry from their years on Saturday Night Live together. And so to have joy and fear play off of each other really well. That was another one where early on it was going to be those two that got lost and went through the adventure, and they eventually changed it to sadness, and which I think works better, as we'll get into. But it would have been interesting to see those two, especially those two actors doing the movie, how that would have played out, because it would have been a very different movie with joy and fear.
For sure.
But yeah, Bill Hader, I'm with you. He can do no wrong. I loved him in It Chapter 2. Like, there's something about him in that movie with everything else around it. He was just like, he was a perfect amount of levity to have in those parts. And so like, I'll watch anything that he's in. And for him to be in this as fear, and he's so neurotic. And I love when he comes in with like his big stack of, here's all the things that could possibly go wrong on day one. And starting with this and this, and the third thing he names, and that's the first thing the teacher says, and just the reaction. It's just perfect.
Yeah, I know, it was so great.
And this is one of the top 2 castings of any role in any film I've ever seen, is Lewis Black as Anger. Because I have been a Lewis Black fan for over 20 years. I first heard him when I was at college at Michigan State University. A friend of mine is like, you got to listen to this guy. Plays the White Album for me, and it blew me away. Like, it was, for me, I was going to listen to Lewis Black and George Carlin. Those were my comedians to listen to. And for him to play Anger, I'm like, there's no way you could pick a better person to play the character of Anger than Lewis Black.
Absolutely. That's really funny that you mentioned Lewis Black in college, because like I was coming here to say, like, Lewis Black came and played my university when I was in college, and I went.
Oh, it's such a good show too. I went about 10 years ago, I think, and saw him.
Okay. Yeah, my God, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, it was all close to 20 years ago. I went and saw Lewis Black, and I was just like, what is happening?
No, I saw him in 2015. I'm sorry. That's when I saw him.
Okay.
Again, at Michigan State University. And it was like the first live stand-up comedian I'd seen in years. And I'm like, no, Lewis Black in an election year, I'm going. So it was either 15 or 16. I was like, there's no way I'm missing that. But him as Anger, because of the type of stand-up that he does, I'm like, this is perfect. And then they incorporated him into the character and his stand-up style into that character, where he's wearing the red tie and the white shirt, and he's always carrying a newspaper around. And I love that Anger's newspaper headlines matched what was going on.
Yeah. Yes.
It was so good. And like
so cool.
Little things too. Like every time he would interact with the console, Anger would always slam his fists into the console and then do something on it. He couldn't just hit the buttons. He had to hit the thing first and then do his buttons. It was great. By the way, the other top 2 casting of all time for me is George Carlin as Cardinal Glick in Dogma, because
that's totally fair.
That's just chef's kiss. Like, it's just perfect. But yeah, Lewis Black as Anger. I mean, he's my favorite character in this just because it's Lewis Black, and they let him really have a lot of fun with it. And I actually take that back. Second favorite character, but that's because Bing Bong, played by Richard Kind.
Bing Bong. Oh my God. Bing Bong stole my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Bing Bong stole every piece of my heart. And I am sitting here, like, seriously, as a child, I love that they hit on the imaginary friend thing. Because, I do my podcast with my brother, and he's going to hate me for this. We shared an imaginary friend, and it was just a regular guy named Bob. That's all it was. It was nothing magical or mystical or anything like unusual about it. It was just a guy named Bob. I was like, oh, there's Bob. And that's and so I'm watching this. I was like, man, this kid had a lot more imagination than I did.
Oh, that's
that
amazing.
Is a badass imaginary friend. I just had this dude named Bob.
Just some schmo named Bob.
That I had to share.
It wasn't even your own imaginary friend. You were sharing it with your brother.
I don't know if his Bob looks the same as my Bob, but they were the same Bob. It doesn't matter.
But also, like, Bing Bong, like, the imaginary friend is so much fun, and they did a great job of making this weird, like, yeah, he's part elephant and got a cat tail, and he's made mostly out of cotton candy, and like just craziness. And like, I love that he cries candy. Yeah. And in the middle of crying the candy, he's like, try the caramel. They're wonderful. Like, and and Richard Kind is so good. Like, his voice is perfect for it. But, and this is, I blame Pete Docter for this more than anything, is I was bawling when the scene with them using the rocket to get out of the memory. I couldn't hold it together. I have a note to myself really trying not to cry, followed by, yeah, I'm crying now. Just like that emotional moment. And that moment is so well executed because they don't dwell on it either.
Right.
Yet they've set it up so well. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just like, because it's all about moving forward, and they couldn't dwell on it. I think dwelling on it would have been, there's no more eloquent way for me to say this. Dwelling on it would have been a bad idea, because like they just needed to move it forward. And I think once Joy got out, like you're upset about Bing Bong, but it's like, okay, but we're moving forward. She will eventually remember Bing Bong at some point later, because I mean, I forgot about Bob for a long time.
Yeah. And the thing with it is, like, and it's not something that I noticed the first time I saw the movie, but they foreshadow that Bing Bong will come to this conclusion when he looks at a memory and sees Riley, and it's like, oh, she's gotten so big now, she won't fit in the rocket anymore. And that's him. Then you think about that later on. He realizes that him being in the rocket with Joy is weighing it down. And so, like, the memory, holding on to that memory of Bing Bong is weighing her down too much to be able to help Riley. And he sacrifices himself and does it in the most selfless way and without Joy ever knowing, so she can't try to stop him. Just,
Yep, because Joy would have.
Oh, absolutely. It's such a gut punch of a moment because you see it coming the second, especially when you watch it again, you're gonna see all the tells and all the foreshadowing. But he gives that one. He's like, I have a good feeling about this try, and even this time around, I'm just like, oh, no. Well, here come the tears because I can't help it. But Bing Bong, he's such a fun character too, and I love that he's stashing all the memories in that bag, and then when he's like, oh, you need this, and he just dumps them all out. Yeah. And there's like a boot and a sink and just whatever's coming out of that thing. And he's always holding his hat, his little bowler hat on his head with his trunk. Just so good. Bing Bong was great. And Richard Kind is one of those, he shows up in a lot of Pixar. I think he's been in like half a dozen of them or something.
Okay.
Going all the way back to...
He's no John Ratzenberger, but he's close.
Yeah. He's not in all of them, but he goes back as far as, I think, Bug's Life. I remember him being in that one. And he's just one of those actors that I feel like he often gets put into comedic roles, and I think it's the tone of voice that he has just fits that. It's hard to put him into a serious role because there's not enough people that would take him seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, full disclosure for me, I can't remember the character's name, but he's like the annoying friend from Mad About You for me always. Like, everything he does, like, I know it's Richard Kind. I know he does so many other things, and I was like, oh, Mad About You. That's where my brain goes immediately.
Yeah, I go to he had a small character in the Stargate movie as one of the translators, and he was the one that translated something wrong. And I just, for whatever reason, I picture him like holding a book, looking at a blackboard, like, why are you changing the thing that I worked so hard on? But he's great, and the character of Bing Bong was just like perfectly placed in the movie, the right amount of thing, because he and Joy work so well together because they're both just endlessly positive. And it also sets up and allows us to get the first turn in the story with Sadness and Joy seeing Sadness as a positive influence for the first time.
Yeah, oh my God, you're right. Like, that whole thing with Joy seeing Sadness as a good thing was like a, kind of thing for me. It's like, you know that. Like, sometimes when you're sad, you gotta wallow in it for a little bit because that's how you get to the other side of it.
Yep.
But sadness isn't a bad emotion to have. Like, if you're happy all the time, then again, there's something toxic about that too. So I like that this helped Joy see the balance that sad isn't always bad.
Yeah, and Joy really goes through like all 5 of the emotions towards Sadness during the movie. She goes from being like disgusted and angry by Sadness, fearful of it a little bit, but then feeling that sadness and kind of coming to that realization and eventually embracing and becoming joyous of it. And it's great because joy is the first emotion that the baby feels in the beginning of the movie. But the next one is sadness, and that kind of sets us up for what we're going to get throughout the movie, which is that balance of joy and sadness. Because a baby, a joyful baby doesn't cry, but a baby needs to cry in order to communicate. And that sadness lets the baby communicate and survive.
Yep.
And
yeah,
I love that. And I just love the way they portrayed this balance. And it's such a wonderful story. And it's like a perfect coming of age type thing because there is no external antagonist going on. It's all internal.
Yeah. And I feel like, like that was super important for Disney and Pixar to do. And I really like the direction that they're going with a lot of the things that they're putting out now, because it's it's kind of, showing that, young people are more complex and they've been given credit for a long time. Because you've got Inside Out, you've got Red, which,
Mm-hmm.
sidebar to all of this, I'm a little bummed out that Lightyear got a theatrical release, but Red didn't. But that's a thing for a whole other thing. But anyhow, um, I like what they're doing, basically saying like, no, like you may, be like a teen or a tween or like whatever it is that you are, or a kid even, but like there are complex things and like it's okay to talk about them, it's okay to explore them, and here's a metaphor for that. I mean, obviously, all that's happening in the reverse order. The kids watching this, like, oh, like I'm feeling all of this stuff, and this is okay. Like this,
Yeah.
finding those connections. Because I mean, honestly, like, yeah, like Toy Story was great and stuff. But I like that they're getting deeper with the emotional things and things that are kind of more relatable on like a personal level for kids. And I think that's
Absolutely.
really important. And I'm glad they're doing it.
I agree completely, because I do think like Toy Story and A Bug's Life and especially the early Pixar stuff, they were great stories. And what we're seeing is the storytelling and the storytellers at Pixar evolve and mature and be able to get more complex. And now because I think this was the first Pixar movie that didn't have any kind of an external antagonist. Because there is no like bully at school or problem with her parents or anything like that. It's her dealing with her emotions of this change, and I loved that. And like it becomes very personal, and none of the emotions are really wrong.
Right. You find yourself reaching for that external antagonist too, because I mean, when I'm watching, it's like, oh, it's going to be the dad. The dad's going to be a jerk, isn't he? It's like, oh, maybe it's the mom, but like, no, it's not. Like and then when you get into their heads, you see they're dealing with their own stuff internally and doing the best that they can outwardly with it. And it's just so great. I mean, I like to imagine now that I have like these little tiny people in my brain trying to co-pilot what's happening.
Oh, sure.
I feel it's almost I think it's a really good coping mechanism for kids too, to kind of think about like just being like, no, okay, sadness is piloting the ship today, but like all the other ones are still there.
Yeah. Yep. And that was the best part. It was always a balance. Like joy. So for Riley, joy was the main force, and that makes sense. Kids tend to be mostly positive, especially if they've had a good home life and like things are going well. And so joy is piloting the ship, but the rest of them are there to influence. And joy, as when Riley is young, is always trying to steer everything to be happy. Happy memories, happy this, happy that. If you notice early on, it's all the memory balls are yellow, and then we start to see different colors slowly working their way in. And then if you look at like when they go inside the mom's brain, it's the same 5 emotions, but sadness is steering the ship.
Yep.
Sort of like kind of, feelings for other people and empathy. And that tells you a lot about the mom, who, by the way, is voiced by Diane Lane, and I thought did a fantastic job as well.
Yeah.
But so you sort of see how like that right there gives you a shorthand and an insight into that character and what her life has been like, that's where she goes, is sort of this feeling for other people. And then you got the dad, who's piloted by anger.
Anger, yeah.
But it's like anger in the form of like protectiveness and like being, the protector, the big strong dad, right?
He's stressed out. Like that's anger
Yeah.
in the form of just being stressed.
Yes.
Because like he's trying to do entirely too much. And I heard the when they're taking that road trip out to the new house and stuff, you can see both the mom and the dad trying to like be positive about this the whole time to keep that joy going in Riley, but then like kind of knowing who's piloting the ship in each of their brains is like, man, that must have, like in the mom's brain, joy had to have been poking sadness like, come on you gotta, and it's just like, oh man. And it kind of tells you that like sometimes it is really hard to put that happy face on, and
Oh yeah.
the parents did it until they couldn't.
Yeah, and the other thing too was like the family dynamic was such a healthy one of like they all got along, and what I liked was with the mom having sort of sadness at the forefront, or I think of it more like empathy really at that point, because it's sort of joy is this personal internal, like inside to the outside, whereas sadness really looks at what other people are thinking. Because if you notice when all 5 of the emotions inside Riley are talking about like what they're thinking about, sadness goes to all our friends are back home. Like the first thing that sadness goes to is someone else. So it's sort of that outside in thing. And like the mom is the first one to notice that something's off with Riley, in part because dad is so busy with work and whatever his nameless company is. I think they named the company Brang or something silly like that, like some just silly made up word. But so that kind of made sense, and I just loved all of that. But I liked how even after they have the fight at the dinner table, and who, like, if you've ever known anybody between the ages of 10 and 12, that exact thing has gone down at a dinner table. And the dad does what he thinks he has to do, but then he's willing to go up and talk to her afterwards. And he's still, there's still like a healthy relationship between them, even if she's still angry, and obviously her joy and sadness are missing now, and her personality is falling apart internally. And there's like, it's so much going on at that time. And the dad's just like, you know what? You need a little time. That's okay. I won't push. And I liked that. I liked that they didn't make that didn't become an adversarial relationship.
Yes, and I was expecting it to be honest with you. Like when I was watching it, like I was fully expecting, like when the dad went up, I was expecting that to not go anywhere near the way that it went. And I agree with you completely. I like that it stayed inside with Riley, because she had too much going on inside to deal with anything more from the outside with it, And I liked that there wasn't, now correct me if I'm wrong, but I liked that there wasn't like a real bully or anything like that. It was just normal stuff that goes wrong for kids. Like she didn't do great at the tryout. Like the first day of school didn't go super well. Like there was none of that, stereotypical. I just watched, Stranger Things. So like there was none of that, like, like real, like over the top bully kind of stuff happening. And I think that's great, because a lot of the real, like, over-the-top bully sort of stuff that you see in movies is not, like, kind of the way that it goes down in real life anyway. It's a lot more nuanced most of the time. So I like that they handled it with a really, kind of soft hand with anything that might have been going on outside. It wasn't, like, beating you over the head with the fact that, like, oh, no, she's being bullied or this or that or anything. It's like, maybe, like, a little stuff went wrong. The kids blow it up.
Yeah, no, they didn't have the Stephen King bullies, as I like to call them, because he writes very very one note bullies. And
sure.
No, in fact, the first day of school for her, while it doesn't go great, it's not nearly as bad necessarily as she thinks it is, because if you kind of watch it again, you notice the teacher has her stand up, she starts to talk, and she starts to have her little bit of a mini crisis. None of the kids in the class react poorly. None of them poke fun at her or laugh or anything like that. And the teacher is even like, look, I understand it's hard to talk about it sometimes. And for Riley, it's just devastating and it's awful. And, of course it's going to be the worst thing ever, but I liked that it was played very, very straightforward and didn't go over the top cartoony with it. Because it just shows how the internal struggle is more often much worse than what actually happens. So, it doesn't, you might remember it feeling the way that, say, Stranger Things portrays it, but that might not be how it happened. And so I liked that that was how they showed it in this. Same thing with the hockey. Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that didn't go. It could have been a whole heck of a lot worse,
And to have it, so the way I love the internal structure of the mind and the way they have the headquarters and the 5, major emotions are there, and all the the memories are being made during the day, and then they take those memories and they shove them off to long-term storage at night when she goes to sleep. But those core memories are what create the personality islands, and those sit in between the headquarters and the long-term memory are where the personality lies, underneath which is all where all the memories go to die. And it's such an interesting visual for everything. And then to show like those core memories got taken away and that personality started to break down, but it didn't just immediately evaporate. It took time, and then we're watching it all sort of fall apart. And like, you know, she doesn't like, you don't forget how to play a sport like hockey that you've been playing for all of your life, but to have all this other stuff going on, you're not going to be as sharp with it. And I liked the way that they did that, where she is out on the ice. It's not like she just suddenly forgot how to skate, but she wasn't
She's not a
sharp.
big giraffe out there like, "Ugh." Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
And so I really enjoyed that. I loved all the stuff they did with the internal world, the long-term storage, and how it's these winding paths, and they've got like memories that fade over time. And so there's Paula Poundstone and the other guy that come through and remove the old memories. I recognized her voice right away because I listened to a lot of Wait, Don't Tell Me. And she's on there all the time. Yeah. I was like, I'd forgotten she was in this. I'm like, that's Paula Poundstone. That it has to be. So I'm like looking it up as I'm watching it this time. Like, that is her. Okay.
Yeah. I love the bit with the I don't remember what it's for, but the jingle that just shows up every once in a while.
That's so good. That is so perfect. Where it's the two of them, and they're like, "Yeah, we just like to throw this one up to headquarters every once in a while, just for fun, because we like it."
Just for fun. Yeah, that's so real. I mean, we all have that. I have a jingle for a law firm that used to play all the time. Like when I was a kid, and I used to sing it when I was a kid, and like every once in a while it'll just pop into my head again. I could do it right, working for the people, Cephalo, and I'm like, nope, I have no need for Cephalo and Associates now.
Right.
But I didn't then either, but gosh darn, I know the jingle.
It's so good, and that was such a great running gag because they used it at least 2 more times with anger when he would try to pull up a memory and that would just start playing. Like, that felt so real. And and like the train of thought, and how when she goes to sleep the train of thought stops, but like there's that train of thought was really cool because it's this train and the tracks are being laid in front of the train as it moves forward. And I'm watching that, and the first time I saw it I'm thinking at any point this thing's going to get derailed. Like it just has to, because of the way that they're set. Like I just loved that visual. I loved Imagination Land, and all the stuff in there. The House of Cards. If you look at the cards for the House of Cards, the king is dad, the queen is mom, and the jack is Riley, but instead of a J on it, it has an R.
Oh yeah. I remember seeing that. Oh, I mean, that whole bit was neat, and the part when they go through the, oh my gosh, the place that they're not supposed to go through, and then they go from like 3D to 1D to 2. And they're like
the abstract thought.
The abstract thought. Yeah, that was so fun.
And it was
that's it though.
And it's great because, again, you're thinking like, okay, there's these, 4 or 5 people kind of steering the ship, but there's all these other workers inside your brain doing stuff. And so you got the people that are coming up with the stuff for abstract thought. And it's like, yeah, we're working on this today. Oh, that's weird. Well, you know what? I'm just going to run it and burn out whatever's in there. Like, and so and how many times have you been sitting around and all of a sudden you just get lost in some kind of abstract, like, deconstruction of something?
Yeah, all the time. All the time. It's nice to know that's a part of my brain. And it's nice to put a visual to it. Yeah.
It really, really is. I loved, like, Bing Bong taking them through Imagination Land and just, like, loving what's going on. Meanwhile, like, he is experiencing and seeing Imagination Land slowly breaking apart because this child is getting older and your imagination just gets stifled sometimes. And so you're seeing the parts of it where you can't believe, like, that castle's gone or this thing's gone, and you're literally watching stuff get, like, piled up as a junk pile and thrown off a cliff.
It's nuts. And like, it's really interesting, like, as you get older, to like think about that. I like to think though, like, just watching this now, I kind of take it as a metaphor for a lot of things. And, you know, I don't have kids, but I've got, you know, my brother has a kid and I've got friends with kids. And I like to talk to kids at the level of kids. And
Hmm.
if a kid wants to play imagination with me, like, you best believe I'm getting down on the floor, I'm doing whatever, and I'm doing the whole thing. And having watched then, you know, Inside Out, I was like, I think I'm rebuilding Imagination Land, because anytime I encounter, and that's tough for a parent to do because they're busy in like caretaker mode. But
Yeah.
like, they're not my kids. All I have to do is like play with I babysat like like a week and a half ago this like 2-year-old, and he was just like, "Hey," and I'm like, "Okay, what are we doing?" You know, and I like to think that, you know, I'm giving myself the opportunity to rebuild my own Imagination Land.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe whatever, you know, my, you know, Bob in my head, he's not Bing Bong, he's Bob for me, but maybe Bob is in there somewhere being like, "Oh man, the castle's coming back." I'm like, "Yeah, well, you know, here you go, Bob."
Hell yeah. One of the things they didn't do, and obviously a movie like this took, I want to say it was 5 years to make. So like there was a
Mm-hmm.
lot between conception and the final product that gets changed and, you know, cut and whatnot. One of the things they cut from the Mind stuff that I thought was really brilliant was the Department of Faces and Names,
Oh,
because they had this Department of Faces and Names, and what they were going to do was the department was in charge. They had a pair of people that Riley would meet, and the two of them don't like each other. So that was going to be their reasoning behind why sometimes you can't put a face to a name, was that the Faces and Names department people just hated each other and wouldn't talk to each other. I'm like,
that's
oh,
great.
that's such a good joke and such a good bit that I understand. Like, I can see where they cut it because there's no real like moment for that to work, but
Mm-hmm.
that's such a cool idea, and I love
that
stuff like that.
that is a good idea. Oh man, yeah, because that's so true and so real. I was like, man, I know that person. I teach college, right? And man, it takes me a good, you know, a third to a halfway through the semester to like really feel comfortable putting faces to names. You know, because I get, you know, students turning stuff in. I was like, oh yeah, okay, you know, I know Bill. And then like I'm sitting there in class, and like somebody will come up to me like, you know, can you look up my grade? And I'm like, I have like, who are
It's
you? I know you're a kid with baseball cap in the corner, but like, are you who are you though?
it can be tricky. I had a job in my younger days where I was a delivery driver. It wasn't UPS, it was DHL, but same idea. And
Mm-hmm.
there would be people that they would know me and they would know my name, and it took me longer to learn theirs because they had to realize they see me once a day or once every 3 days. I see like 85 people a day,
Yep.
and and it's a rotating list, and like it takes me a while to associate those names and faces. So people that can do that like immediately. About 5 years ago, I was working in a retail job, and my teacher from kindergarten came into the store. And now I am 6'4". I have this beard. She looked at me, kind of cocked her head to the side, and then knew who I was right away. I hadn't
Wow.
seen this woman in 30 years. I hadn't, like, the last time she would have seen me would have been maybe 5th grade, 6th grade. So it had been forever, and she knew who I was right away and remembered my sister. And I'm like, I don't know how you do that. It's some sort of superpower. So
Some people are just good at it.
her names and faces
I-
department got along really well. Is what that means.
Apparently.
Okay. The design of the emotions themselves was very different from what we're used to seeing of like characters, because at first I thought they just looked like fuzzy. And then as you look and you realize more, it's not really a fuzz so much as they're not like a solid thing. It's more of like this collection, and the way Pete Docter described it was a collection of energy. And so there's like Joy literally emanates light. She's the only one without a shadow because she's always giving off this bright yellow light.
Yeah.
And it's those little bits of energy that are kind of floating off of her too. So she's almost like sparkling. I loved that about all, and because all the emotions had that, all of the, they all had that collection of energy feel, and it's such a cool looking. I guess originally they were only going to do it with Joy, and like in order to do that for one character but not the rest of them was just like it was not going to happen. So they had to just do it for everybody. But I loved, again, Pixar does this great job of creating these characters and these memorable looking characters, whether it's Wall-E, whether it's Sully from Monsters Incorporated and the way they did his hair and his fur, Merida's hair in Brave, and like just that shock of just stark red hair. Like I loved all that, but there's something about the look of these emotions that just like it kept my attention all the time.
Yeah, I can see that. And I like, the fact that like they're not solid, right? That they are, energies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that just kind of goes like they're not solid, which means that they can change.
Yeah.
And, they can morph into different things, because the way we experience different emotions, like we said before with disgust, is going to change as you grow and as you experience more things, So I think just them not being solid and being these, kind of fuzzy, like, emissions of energy gives them the room to adjust with time and different experiences and like, perform differently in different situations as they're needed.
Yeah. Yeah. And then to have them like, fear is sort of this like almost like an antenna, like kind of long, curly looking thing. Sadness is like a teardrop shape. And Joy.
I loved her turtleneck.
Oh, her turtleneck was great.
Like that makes so much sense.
It really did. And like to have Joy just be in this light summer dress and just emanating energy all the time and brightness and light. And then you've got Fear there in a bow tie, and he's just nervous and like, it was so good. I just and then to have the translations of those in the adults, and then the credit sequence was like the creme de la creme of that, going into all the different lines. Oh,
the dog. I have two big dogs, and like the dog and cat ones like just totally got me, because like I am such a dog person. I was like, the dog one just felt so true.
Yeah,
like that. Yes,
it was
that's
just
what runs their brains.
Yep, it was just the five of them looked almost identical, and they just all wanted food.
Yep,
like, that's.
Pretty much.
I mean, you can maybe see my dog right behind me here, and that's Bella, and that's her.
Oh, I do.
That would be her.
Oh, I have a Bella too.
Oh, and then the cat.
Yeah, my shepherd. Yeah. Oh, and the cat.
The cat was so perfect because nobody's running the controls. But then it's like, was it Fear that came walking across the control panel and just started hitting random buttons? So the cat just freaks out. And like, if there was any explanation as to why cats do that, that's perfect.
Yep, it's random.
I loved when she bumps into the boy and he turns around and then it just zooms in and it's chaos. And just girl. Like, yep, girl. I've been that boy. 100%. Oh,
yeah,
so good.
Funny.
I just this and you said it earlier on. This is an important movie.
I think so.
Kids need to see this. This is the kind of thing. So I've talked about it before with other kids directed movies. Before where there's certain movies that are important, I think, for kids to see for varying reasons. This wasn't, The Dark Crystal, for instance. When I covered that one of the things that I learned, and I've learned about Jim Henson over the years, was Jim Henson had this feeling that like, kids should be a little bit scared every once in a while. It's not a bad thing to have something scary in a movie, whether it's Labyrinth, Dark Crystal, whether it's Don Bluth. I mean, I grew up with things like An American Tail and The Secret of Nim, and like Don Bluth would scare the hell out of kids, but they were great kids movies at the same time because him and Henson, they knew that perfect line to get to. And like this falls into that category where it's something that kids need to experience, and the fact that you can relate to it so well. I mean, we're talking about all the different things we related to as adults, kids even more so. I love that. So but I think it's important for anybody to see.
Yeah, first, absolutely. And I mean, that's kind of why I wanted to, I was ashamed of myself for like having not seen it. And so I was like, okay, no, I absolutely have to watch this and I need to talk about it. And because I knew it was going to be an important movie. You know what I mean? Just kind of knowing the concept and all that around it. I was like, this movie is important. And seeing it just cemented that for me. Like, no, this really truly is important. And I mean, it helped me, and I feel like anybody over the age of like 5 needs to just watch this and just, get a hold of yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A couple other things I wanted to mention was Bing Bong was not in any of the promotional material for this, and I remember seeing trailers and ads for the movie ahead of time. That's how I knew Lewis Black was going to be in it, and I was like, all right, I'm sold on that alone. Like Lewis Black as Anger, good. But they specifically kept Bing Bong out of any of the promotional materials before the movie came out, which is kind of a smart move. And Pete Docter said part of the reason for that was he hated trailers that gave everything away, and he wanted there to be something held back that could still kind of be a surprise for people when they saw the movie for the first time. So I thought that was great. And I also, because I already mentioned that I was crying during the scene, apparently so was Richard Kind doing the voice work for the scene where
I did.
like, take her to the moon for me, okay? It's just and because Pete Docter had said that, and Kind later was like, yeah, I was crying doing that one. It's such an emotional moment, and that's the turning point. That's the turning point in the movie, because up until then, we've had Joy really trying to steer the ship in her direction only, and putting up with the other 4, but like always pushing everything back towards happiness and joy. And the first turning point, as we mentioned, is her seeing Sadness consoling Bing Bong about the loss of his rocket.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that first time she realizes, because that's the only way he can move on. Here's Joy trying to distract him and trying to keep him happy and doing all this stuff, and she's going in the complete wrong direction. And Sadness just sits down with him, lets him be sad for a minute. He's able to get that through, that catharsis, and then he's like, okay, I'm ready. Let's go this way. And that's that first moment that Joy sees that, and then to see and to have him sacrifice himself, that's when she kind of fully comes around. And now she has to seek out Sadness and be like, you're important. We need to go. It was such a great moment.
Yep. It really was. It really was a great moment. Yeah. And Sadness just, getting dragged around, and touching all the things. Like, that's so relatable, because sometimes just like, have you, like, you've done that. Like, you've walked, like, next to hedges and just kind of had to touch everything, or just down an aisle and like, oh no, I need to touch all the soup, and it's just like, and it makes Sadness relatable.
Oh yeah.
Because like we all do that. Like if you're just kind of moving down something, you just want to touch stuff, and that's what she's doing. And you kind of like, oh no, Sadness, I get you though.
Yeah.
Because we need that. Yeah.
Well, and then when Joy picks up the one memory, and it's the one that got changed from a happy memory to a sad memory, and for her to then realize that the two of them coexisted, like the sadness didn't overwrite the joyful memory, but it gave more context to the memory, and we got to see the whole thing with her sitting on the tree by herself, and then her parents coming over and consoling her and being sad with her, which then morphed into the rest of the team showing up, and then the happy memory. And that was, again, Joy getting to see that context and getting to realize that. And that's the maturity of Riley. And that's Riley growing up. And then after that, what do we see? We see all those memories that are multicolored now. They're yellow and blue. They're red and green. Like all of that. I loved that. That was great. And then you notice and realize that the parents, all of their memories are now like that they're making. But we didn't notice that before because it was kind of always like these background pieces and they were darkened. So it was kind of a cool reveal. I really, really enjoyed that. And to see that memory is evolve and change over time.
Yeah, because as you have more context, they absolutely do evolve and change. I like that. I like that it's all represented with colors too. It's like, because oh no, that put a different color on that. Like we're coloring, like you're kind of filling it in and it's becoming more vibrant. Even if the color isn't joy, like additional colors still make it more vibrant and more. It just completes the picture.
Yeah, and the fact that as as Riley is going through all of this and she loses the joy and sadness for a little while in herself into her long-term memory, her clothing starts to get more and more drab. When she moves to San Francisco, everything is dark and muted, and there's very little like saturation in the color, and that keeps getting more and more that way, the sadder and more lost she gets, until the end when all that color can come back. So like when she first gets to San Francisco, there is still a little bit of optimism there, like the slice of pizza. But I noticed that where like more and more of the color drained out of the real world as more and more of the colorful islands of her personality were draining and falling away. And so then to have that all come back at the end, I just like, it was a great use of color and lighting and just like these subconscious tricks to sort of get you into that right mood that animators just do so well. People like animated movies. I hate when I see, animation's for kids or it's just an animated movie. Like, no, that's way off. But there's something about animation because they can do so much more. They can pour so much more into that.
Yeah, for sure. Oh no. Animated movies are not just for kids, and they're not even always necessarily like, yes, are they great for kids? Yes, but like, can you watch them like as an adult, like with like no child in the room? Like, absolutely, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean, after a certain, like you mentioned, anybody 5 and older should see this. That's about that line. Anything aimed for under 5-year-olds, it's kind of tough for an adult to watch because it's just like it's not meant for the way we take in things.
Right.
But once you get past,
that's all sensory. It's not.
Yeah, exactly. Once you get past that point, like I love watching, and we'll watch episodes of Phineas and Ferb, as an example. That's a show aimed at kids, and it's all about imagination. But like it's genuinely well done, and really enjoyable to watch. So I can remember going to see the Powerpuff Girls movie when it came out, and I was an adult. I was in my 20s when that came out. But I went and saw that in theater anyway. Might have looked a little weird at the time, but that's fine. I don't care. Like, I enjoyed it. It was good because that's another one of those shows. Like, it was aimed at younger people, but I still enjoyed what they were doing. And,
for sure.
And Pixar is like there's just something in the way Pixar makes a movie that becomes relatable to anybody of any age, at any point in your life. And it's usually going to hit you with something that you're not expecting. Like, have you seen Up? Is that one that you've seen?
Oh God, yeah.
Like,
I've seen Up.
I was not prepared for Up the first time I saw it at all.
Oh no, the first 15 minutes of Up just like kills you.
Like the first 15 minutes of Up is up there with the Futurama episode Jurassic Bark.
Don't even.
I can't do it. And that is so powerful. And Pixar just does it. Like the opening of WALL-E is so brilliant, and there's no dialogue. Zero spoken word other than the voiceover, or not the voiceover, the hologram of what's his name. Like that's it. But it's so brilliantly done. And this was another one of those movies where the first time I saw it, and even still now, I still get hit with the gut punches of stuff like Bing Bong, but it's like, it's so well done, and you get something out of it that you're not prepared for at the start of the movie.
Yeah.
And that to me is really powerful, and that's why I think Pixar is so good at what they do, because they can do that consistently. That's not easy. It's not easy to do that once or twice. To do it, they got like a 90% success rate of hitting the mark on these movies.
Yeah, they're gonna get you with something somewhere that you're gonna feel something that you didn't know that you were gonna feel watching a quote end quote kids movie.
Right, exactly that. And they're gonna make you laugh too, and they're gonna have some just brilliant jokes. I like to capture audio from the movies, and I got a couple of good like anger moments. Because it's Lewis Black. When you let him do his thing, you do. And I got to play a couple of these. The fact that you got Lewis Black in a PG movie, by the way, which this is one of the few Pixar movies that gets PG and not just a G rating. But you get Lewis Black in there, and to his credit, he doesn't have to swear. even though it is Lewis Black, and you kind of like, I expect it just because of how much of his stuff I've listened to. But it's sort of like seeing Carlin on Shining Time Station back in the day.
Oh yeah, this is so weird, right?
Like
God.
it's weird for. I just watched. I don't know if you've seen it or not. The HBO documentary on George Carlin.
No, not yet. No.
If you should watch it. It's
I will.
really,
I will.
really good. But one of the things in there was one of the people they interviewed was like, that's how I knew George Carlin was as Mr. Conductor. Like that was his introduction to him. And I'm like, that's so.
I knew him. Yeah, it's so weird.
That's so weird to me.
I
to
knew
think
him as
of, like,
Rufus.
Yeah.
Rufus. Yeah, from Bill and Ted.
Oh yeah. So to have Lewis Black in this PG movie, and of course he's going to bring up.
Can I say that curse word now?
It's so good.
So good.
He also had pizza. His thoughts on pizza.
Congratulations, San Francisco. You've ruined pizza. First the Hawaiians, and now you.
That is like the quintessential Lewis Black delivery too. That really loud, and then he ends it, and I can see him like pointing his finger, like he does.
Yep.
And then calling us San Fran Stink Town, I think was really funny too.
San Fran Stink Town.
Just made me laugh.
Yeah, that's just such a kid way to like gripe about stuff.
It really is. So the first time, so we're inside Riley's head throughout the whole movie, but then the first time they go into the mom's head, and then you see everything going on, and they like signal the dad, signal him, and so she looks over and kind of does the head tilt, and then we go into the dad's brain, and he's just watching football or hockey. Was brilliant, and I loved that. But after that whole scene plays out, the end of it between the two brains is such a great moment where it's.
Good job, gentlemen. That could have been a disaster.
Well, that was a disaster.
Like,
Yeah, that was great.
Once again, it's one of those relatable moments where you're just like, yep, I get it.
Same event, two completely different perspectives.
Yep. And I love how, it's we're going to put the foot down, and like they're getting out the keys to turn it, like going to DEF CON 2, all that stuff is so well done. Meanwhile, in the mom's brain, everything's very laid back, and then they're just going to have the memory of the Brazilian helicopter pilot. Because why not? And then to use that same memory for somebody else at the end of the movie was even like better. To have that exact same Brazilian helicopter pilot. That made me laugh.
It's like, oh no, there he is again. I think I said that out loud. I was like, oh no, there he is again. What's with this guy?
I loved when Sadness asks Bing Bong what he's supposed to be, because his reaction is perfect.
What exactly are you supposed to be?
You know, it's unclear.
Like, he doesn't even know.
It's unclear.
I'm mostly made out of cotton candy. Sad. This was the one line I got from Sadness, but I mean, come on.
Crying helps me slow down and obsess over the weight of life's problems.
Like, Pixar, come on. Hitting a little close to the mark with that one.
Very close to the mark. I mean, sometimes you just do need to sit down and have a good cry and think about the weight of life's problem.
And I have a problem where if a movie uses either a no or a fake laugh, like somebody obviously laughing that's putting on a fake laugh, I have to capture it. So I got Fear.
No!
And now I have that on a soundboard I can use anytime.
Excellent.
And then the movie nerd in me, I don't know if you caught the reference to Chinatown or not, or if you're familiar with that movie.
I am familiar with that movie, but I didn't catch it.
Yeah, so it's towards the end of the movie as Joy is making her way back, and she's chasing Sadness down, and it's the two cops are talking to the woman who's the Cloud, and they're like, "So you're telling me that your husband was blown away by an elephant?" And then Joy runs right through her, and the cloud dissipates, and the one cop says,
Hey, come back here! Forget it, Jake. It's Cloud Town.
Forget it, Jake. It's Cloud Town. That's the final line of the movie Chinatown. Forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown.
Oh my God.
And that's such a good, because unless you're familiar with that movie, that just flies over your head and it's just like a funny moment, but that's such a brilliant moment. And on top of that, you know who the cop was, the voice of the cop that was like, hey, get back here. That was Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yep. Well, Flea does voices and stuff. We actually just talked about that on my show not long ago. Flea doing voices.
They had another couple of voices we didn't mention earlier was Frank Oz and who was the other one? David Goles and Frank Oz were the two guards outside of the subconscious playing guards.
Okay.
Frank Oz played a guard named David.
I knew that was Frank Oz.
Yeah, Frank Oz played the guard named David,
yeah.
and David Goles played the guard named Frank. And they were doing the whole waiting for Godot hat thing. That was another one.
I got the waiting for Godot bit. Yeah.
But I love that. So like I mean, look, Frank Oz pops up. He's got that voice, right? You're like, it's either Fozzie Bear or Miss Piggy, but you know it. You know it's him. And so that was him. Yeah. So I love that, but I just love that China. Like again, waiting for Godot. Like no kid's gonna get that, but that's a great little thing to throw in there. And then a Chinatown reference in a movie like this is out of nowhere. So I just love stuff like that. And finally, this is the last one I want to play, and it's I just got a kick out of this, especially them being in San Francisco.
It's a bear.
There were no bears in San Francisco.
I saw a really hairy guy. He looked like a bear.
That also made me laugh a lot.
I got a big kick out of that for sure. I was like, no, there are bears in San Francisco.
There definitely are. This is a movie, absolutely see it. I'm really glad that you got to see it and got to take that off your list of shame. Like, that's what I love doing with this show, is helping people to see those movies that they feel like they should have seen. And for whatever reason, and myriad different reasons why you don't see something. But now you can say you saw it, and you can spread that to other people.
I guess I can. I can spread the joy and the sadness and the disgust and the fear. Yeah.
All of it. But it's really it is a movie that I do agree with you that people should see.
Mm-hmm. I hear dogs barking, and I always wonder, is that my house or the other person?
In this case, it's my house, and I'm not sure what's going on. But Lauren, thank you so much for being on this week. This was great. I'm glad that you got to see a movie, and it was a fun conversation. I like breaking down stuff like this because, like you said, there are layers to this movie. There's more that we could go into, I'm sure, with a movie like this.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you again for having me. And I feel like this is one of those movies that needs to be, if it's not already, I'm sure some like enterprising college instructor has done so already, but I really want this broken down at like a psych class or something. I would love to like a whole course about Inside Out.
Yeah.
You know, I some kids somewhere, you know, at some point is going to love that.
Oh, yeah. And Amy in the chat room did mention that child psychologists do use the toys from this movie to help kids kind of explain what they're feeling. And it makes perfect sense.
Nice. Yeah.
So I definitely agree with that. I just adore this movie. I have yet to see a Pixar movie I didn't like. Some of them I like more than others, but it's hard to not like one of their movies. But this,
I agreed.
Like this for me, I put this really high on that list. Like I put it up there with WALL-E. For me, is one of their best. This movie, and I really like Cars myself. The first Cars, there's something about that.
The first Cars is good. Yeah. There is something good about the first car. I mean, the first Cars brings up a lot of questions about how things kind of work and all this and the other. But Cars is good. Up is good. Up is fantastic.
Up is amazing.
WALL-E for sure. I mean, they always do a good job.
They really do. I think the only reason I wouldn't put Up as high as something like this is just it. I have to be in the right mood to make it through that beginning, because I gotta get through that first 10 minutes to appreciate the rest of it. And some days I just don't have that.
I get that. Yeah, you don't always have that. Now, one of my dogs is a Doberman, so I always get a big kick out of that part. And Up, where he's got the whole voice, and I was like, yeah, I can see that happening though.
Yeah, that's great. But thank you so much for being here. Now, you do a podcast called Beard Al.
I do. Yes. I do the podcast Beard Al with my brother, John, and we talk about our two favorite things in the world, beer and Weird Al Yankovic. And generally on our regular episodes, what we do is we pair a craft beer with a Weird Al song, like one might pair a wine with a meal. We try and
Nice.
make a connection, and we just kind of have a conversation. But my brother's on every other week, and then the week my brother's not on, I have guests on to talk about, the Weird Al topic du jour. Right now, I'm pretty deep in doing what I'm calling my like Weird Al album like ranked series, where I kind of rank the songs on the albums from my least favorite to my most favorite, and my guests do the same, and we go off of their rankings and like see where we agree and disagree with kind of how we feel like what our favorites are. Now, this is none of the songs are bad. It's like I said, it's least favorite to most favorite. It's
yes.
not worst to best.
Correct, because there is no bad Weird Al song.
There is no bad Weird Al song, no.
I have made contested for probably 20 years now that if everyone would just listen to Weird Al just once a day, just a song a day is all you need, the world would be a better place, because you cannot, it's scientifically proven, you can't be in a bad mood after you listen to a Weird Al song. You just can't.
I 100% agree. I absolutely agree. That's why I do what I do, because I feel like more people, I'm a Weird Al evangelist, so I just feel like people need to listen to more Weird Al.
Absolutely. When I found out about your show, I was like, wow, somebody who's a bigger fan of Weird Al than me. I didn't know if I could find that, but your Weird Al knowledge well trumps mine. And I have often thought that I had like the biggest fandom that I knew, but no, I don't hold a candle to yours. But it's just, I used to, that same delivery job would get stressful, and I'd have my iPod with me, and I'd listen to like 2 Weird Al songs, take 10 minutes to do that, and my day would instantly get better, because
it takes the edge off. Yeah,
he has this way of looking at things, and he has a humor that is universal, and it's never punching down. No matter how much he makes fun of something, it's always punching up at it. It's never the low-hanging fruit. And
right. Yeah.
That is a skill that you cultivate over time, and he's definitely done that. And
he's very good at it.
So good. And it's great, because like there are plenty of parodies he could have done over the years that he just didn't do, because there's nothing there to do. Like, I'm not going to do the easy one. I'm going to instead take and do, instead of All About the Benjamins, All About the Pentiums, stuff like that. Like, and then his original songs. Albuquerque is still one of my favorite songs ever.
Oh, it's the best. It's great. It's great.
Between Albuquerque and Stuck in the Drive-Thru, those are two of the longest songs that just...
In his oeuvre.
It's amazing to write songs like that.
You gotta put Genius and France in that category. Jackson Park Express. He's got these long opuses that are just like, the man is an absolute genius.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I don't know what her problem is.
Somebody's just going crazy town. It's all right. The doggo's got a doggo.
It's not like her, so I'll have to go see what's going on. But thank you so much for being here this week, Lauren. This has been great. We'll have to do it again. We'll find another movie. Yeah. Maybe we'll find something. We can't do UHF because I've already done that, and I love UHF. I've seen it a ton of times.
I've seen it.
Maybe
got
once
the poster
or twice.
behind me.
But we'll have to find another one and have you back on, because this was a great conversation.
Yeah. Cool, thanks. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure I've got huge gaps in what I've seen, so we'll find something.
We all do. I have gaps and stuff that it's just what happens. But thank you so much. Where can people find the Beard Al podcast? Just Beard Al, spelled like beer, right? Beerd.
Yep. It's beer, like the drink. BEERD Al podcast.com. You can find all of our stuff there, and we're at Beard Al Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And coming up next week, I am talking with Emily Edwards, and we're going to talk about the Muppet movie. She's never seen it, and I can't wait, because Muppets, I love Muppets. So I get to go from Pixar to the Muppet movie. How great of a job do I have?
You're blessed.
I really am. If you enjoy this show and you want to hang out when I record it live and be in the chat room, please do so. It's Sunday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern Time at twitch.tv/tvstravis. And the show comes out on Wednesdays anywhere you get podcasts, or tvstravis.com, because I gave it a terrible name and it's kind of hard to search for sometimes. I put punctuation in there, and I wasn't thinking SEO when I named the show. So tvstravis.com is the quickest way to find and subscribe. And you can support the show via coffee. Buy me a cup of coffee at ko-fi.com/tvstravis. So come on back next week for the Muppet movie with Emily Edwards. I can't wait for that. So thank you once again, Lauren, for being here. And as I like to say every week, enjoy your movies and let's be excellent to each other because, boy, do we need that. This is a weight you haven't seen.
I have access to the entire curse word library. This new console is done.
Sorry, I did it again. My bad.
Oh, that moment was perfect.
Great.
You. I don't know what's going on, but I'll have to go inspect. Okay. Now she's sitting here, like bolt upright against the chair. Are you protecting me? Is that what's going on?
From what though?
I don't know. It's weird. Nobody ever comes to my house without calling me first. Well, thank you so much. This was great.
Yeah, thanks. I had a good time, and I'll look forward to. I'll share it. Obviously, I'll do the whole thing.
Yeah. Yep. I'll tag you on it on Wednesday, and yeah, I got to check out some of those rankings of the albums because I'm curious. I have thoughts.
Oh, a lot of people do. The one we did on even worse. People came at us for that one.
That's a weird period for him, right? Because like I feel like pre-Alapalooza, Even Worse is such a good album. I don't know. I also haven't listened to that album front to back in a long time. I think it's
you should. It's weird because it doesn't have a polka on it, which makes it an anomaly in his catalog. But it's got fat, and it's got some real great moments on it, some real classics on there, and that's where people had a hard time with it because some classics got pooped on.
Was the album before that the polka album or
Polka Party?
Yeah. Okay. I wonder if that's why he didn't put one on Even Worse. It was just because he had just done the polka album.
Well, I mean, there's only one polka on Polka Party. It's Polka Party's not all polkas. Polka Party's just a regular album with one polka on it.
Why did I think it was? I swear he did an album that was all polka.
He did not.
Huh.
You're having one of those, what is it?
A Mandela effect.
Mandela effect, yeah.
I'm getting Mandela'd. Was The Night Santa Went Crazy, was that on Even Worse? Or is
Bad Hair Day.
That's Bad Hair Day?
Yep.
Jeez. Boy, I gotta brush up. I'm like conflating all sorts of stuff now. It's weird. That might be one of my favorite Christmas songs, though.
Oh, it is. It's on my Christmas playlist. That and Christmas at Ground Zero, which is on Polka Party.
That one I always remember because I had a VHS tape that had every Weird Al music video up until it went up to, but did not include Jurassic Park. So it was everything pre-Jurassic Park.
Okay.
Which is actually how I knew about the movie Johnny Dangerously for the longest time.
This is a life.
I'd never seen it, but I had seen that video. I wore that tape out.
Oh, so. Yeah. I've still never seen Johnny Dangerously, but I've been told that I'm supposed to watch it, but I don't know.
It's interesting. I mean, it's not bad, but it's definitely.
I'm not expecting it to be good.
Although, if you like Michael Keaton and you like, is it Piscopo? I think Joe Piscopo.
Does anybody like Joe Piscopo?
Well, no, but if you like Michael Keaton, there's something to be there. It's a silly parody type movie.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'm going to go find out what she's barking at.
She's barking at. Yeah. All right. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you again.
Thank you. And have a good rest of your night.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Right. Bye. And thank all of you for being here. I am going to go find out what the hell Bella's getting all loud about. So thank you, everybody, for hanging out. Love y'all. You're great. You're wonderful. Be good. And I'll be back tomorrow night over at twitch.tv/2dorkstv. We're talking I Love Lucy for Those Were the Days. We had 1 week off, and we're back at it. So that'll be fun. And Highlander this week as well. So be cool. And yeah, I'm looking forward to Muppet Movie next Sunday. So some good stuff coming this week. Until then, everybody have a great night. Bye.